Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So, I've got a very unique episode for you today. I'm speaking to one of my dear friends, Amy Carlton, who is one of London's leading parenting coaches with over a decade of hands on experience. Through therapeutic coaching and her conscious parenting philosophies, she is transforming the parent child dynamic, offering practical solutions that actually work. Now, before we go any further, I just want to say you probably well know if you've been following this podcast for a while, I don't have kids. And so we will touch base on parenting and children, but we are actually going to be largely talking about navigating conflict and just relationships in general. So wherever you are at, if you are single and don't have a kid, if you've got 12 kids, whatever your situation, I promise you, Amy's got so many amazing insights. And I know this from our back and forth voice notes on WhatsApp. There's so much that you are going to get from this conversation. So Amy, welcome to the show.
Oh my God, thank you. Over 10 years experience makes me feel really old. It reminds me how long I've been doing this. It's amazing to be here. Thank you for having me. It's really interesting to be on this podcast with you talking about relationship, because what people come to me for very often is their children, but I don't work with children. I work with
You work with the parents.
because my focus is not children. My focus is interpersonal relationship. And
Mm.
the reason that kids are such a big part of that is because you can't get away from them.
You can't just break up with them.
You can't just take a week and go away with friends. You can't dump them. You can't leave. You're stuck. And so it is the biggest reflection of your patterns and your triggers and your relationship downfalls. So what I always say is we are in the closest interpersonal relationship between a parent and a child. And so that's where you can do loads of incredible self-development work. But I'm not going to work with your kids. I want to work with you and how you relate. What are the stories you're telling yourself? What are the reactions that you're having to the situations in front of you? Because what's going on's got nothing to do with your kid. It's all to do with you and how you relate.
I'm actually floored by what you've just said. Firstly, because the first part about like you can't get away from that, like that is why I don't have kids right now. That's like my commitment issues, my avoidance. I've done so much work around that in terms of a romantic relationship. And I'm 38 at the time of recording this. So I'm in that, and I got married a couple of years ago. You were there. And, of course, I'm getting all the questions. And I just want to, this is a side note, but I know there's a lot of women who are going to identify with this. It's unbelievable how much I get asked this and my husband doesn't. And also like what people feel that they can say to you. They
Oh,
don't know that I don't have like fertility issues. And like there's still in 2024 the shaming and the sort of, oh, you're gonna regret that. Oh, that's really selfish of you. And I'm just like, I cannot believe you're saying this to me. That's
I'll
just a
tell you
side
what
note.
would be really selfish of you is to have children because other people expect you to.
Exactly. And also, can I say that some of the people saying this to me, this is what's so ironic. They go, you're going to regret that when you're old and you have no one to take care of you. And like, whatever. I'm like, that sounds really selfish. Well, I'm having a child so that when I'm like 90 and shitting myself, they can put me in a home.
Well,
That is absolutely ridiculous. Is
having
that actually
children
why
is
people
the most selfish thing you can do is having children.
oh
Having children is nothing to do with children. Having children is all to do with the self.
my God. Say
Think
more.
about it. Think about it. Anyone you ask about having kids, why did you have kids? What does the sentences start with? I, me. I wanted the experience. I wanted somebody to love. I wanted somebody to love me as much as I loved them. I wanted to raise a family. I. It's all about our experience. And that's why that relationship is so difficult, because when it doesn't go according to plan, which inevitably it won't, we're so frustrated. And so we end up in this conflict. I say to so many people I work with, wanting your children to be happy is so selfish. It's a huge expectation and it's so selfish. And you're asking your children to live by an impossible task, because people can't just be happy. It's not a thing that you get. It's a state that you're in at times in life, right? But I say, why do you want let's just say your partner. Let's widen it. Okay, let's just be a bit realistic about relationship, right? So just want my partner to be happy. Well, especially if we struggle with codependence, which I definitely have, we're asking other to be happy because their feelings, their state has such an effect on our nervous system that we can't bear it if they're not in a good state. So what we're doing is trying to manipulate their situation to make sure they're happy so we can feel calm.
Feel better. Yeah. Oh my God. You know, I have a large number of women who come to work with me, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. They come to work with me because they're approaching 40, or some, it's basically the 30s, and the clock starts going, the biological clock starts going, they start freaking out. And, they're like, I want to have a baby. I don't want to do it on my own. And get me a partner. It's like, whoa, okay, right. Tall order. But we can work with it. But that's, that is a reality that women have to deal with. Women who, unlike me, are very clear that they want to be a mother. I've never felt that clarity. Now, listen, who knows what's going to happen in the future? But like, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's such a lot of pressure that women, I think, that we put on ourselves, that society put on us. And it's like, it's really overwhelming.
Well, there's an illusion that just because you're with somebody, it's easier. I mean, it's an extra pair of hands for sure, but for someone from the perspective of I have 2 kids, for clarity, 2 that make me also feel really how am I old enough to have 2 children, because I am a child. So I don't understand it myself. But yeah, having a child, from my own experience and from, I guess, the experience of working with so many families, having a child, raising a family, being in that kind of intense, intimate relationship that is the family structure with somebody who is not walking a path with you, that is not actually a partner. There's a very big difference between finding a husband or finding a boyfriend and finding a partner, somebody who could be in the journey with you. There is probably nothing more lonely than raising a child with a person who is not a partner than doing it on your own, because you have never felt more alone. You never feel more alone than when you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't see you, hear you, or understand you. There's nothing more lonely, I don't think, than being in a relationship with somebody and going, please understand who I am, please see who I am, please love me for who I am, and then you don't feel that coming from them. It feels like a vortex of aloneness. At least when you're alone, you can have a wanting of somebody to see you, love you, and understand you. When you're with somebody who isn't aligned with you in that way, and I think there's always that the scale moves, and it's 80-20, and sometimes they don't see you as much as you see them, all that happens. But then you add a child into that, I'd rather be on my own.
Yeah. It just made me feel so grateful for the relationship I have with my husband, Joe, because I'm like, and, like you said, sometimes we don't see each other because life happens, blah, blah, but I know, I'm like, he has got my back. We are a team. We are partners. And that's why I'm so passionate about the work I do, because, that's why, I just, everything you said there, the idea of having a child is hard enough with a great partner who has your back, but being in a relationship with someone who doesn't. I mean, look, that's why trauma and generational patterns, they just get passed down and down and down. And so I think the work you're doing is so important, Amy, because it's like, this is how we, and both the work we're both doing, this is how we break the patterns, is, the conscious, becoming conscious. And like I say, if you want to really like grow and expand, get in a relationship, because the other person is going to reflect everything back to you. And what I'm hearing you say is like, if you want to 10x that, have a kid, because that is so confronting in so many ways. Can you maybe like tell me some some positives?
Having kids. Oh, there are. Do you know what it is? I just think people are full of shit. Sorry, am I allowed to say that on a podcast?
Oh, you certainly can on this one.
I think I struggled really badly with postnatal depression when I had my eldest. I was stupidly young.
How
It
young?
was I was 26.
Hmm.
And I felt really young. It was planned. It was, the joy of life, and it was something I definitely knew that I wanted to do. I have to be honest, I didn't give it much thought about my why.
Hmm.
But I also didn't give my marriage much thought about my why. I'm so lucky, because I think intrinsically in me, I knew I wanted to be in relationship with somebody, and so I am. But I didn't think about all the pros and cons. I was 24, was not thinking about pros and cons. But I was super, super, super young, and I hit a wall. I was like, my whole life exploded, and no one had talked to me about this. No one had talked about how hard it was, and even my peers asked me questions like, I was trying to reach out and be seen and share and communicate, because that's obviously who I am as a person, all about communication, saying this is so hard. I'm questioning everything about myself. I've lost a big part of who I am. I've gained a big part of who I am as well, but I'm trying to kind of remember who I am in relationship to this new person who I kind of resent for making me sacrifice everything, but then I actually kind of don't want to do anything but sacrifice everything. So it was really confusing, that duality. And they would say to me, but it's really fun though, isn't it? I was like, no, I'm telling you, it's really not at this
What, being a
point.
parent?
She was very young, and I was postnatal. I was sick at that point. And so no one was kind of getting it. And then when it wasn't until I got better, I thought, my whole life has to be focused on helping people understand the reality of life, whatever that might be, whether it's parenting or marriage or your relationship with your parents or the truth about your job. It's like, come on, we women together, no one's talking about this shit.
Mm.
I feel ashamed of who I am as a woman, as a mother, because no one has talked to me about this. I feel completely alone. So there is a lot that is very nuanced and very polarized in your own head about being a parent. I feel I love it, and I find it equally hard in equal measure. But I think, isn't that relationships as well? Isn't that relationships?
Completely.
Can I be deeply in love with someone and just possibly want to put arsenic in his breakfast? Like, or just please don't breathe. Like, oh my God, can you just not be you for like 5 minutes? And yeah, I love you with my whole heart. I would put myself in front of a car for you.
Yeah.
And that's life. The duality is constantly being in this. I think, are we allowed to feel the feelings that we feel?
Mm.
We're always looking for, am I validated in having this feeling? And the truth is like, always, whether it's right or wrong, there is no right or wrong. The reality is over here, and how you feel in yourself in reflection of whatever that situation is. So I find being a mum unbelievable. I love it. I love this bit. I think people are better at different bits, depending, I really believe, on our trauma. So depending
Yeah.
what bits were hard for us as kids, or what bit, some people are like, they found their younger years very, very difficult, and so therefore they love having little babies
Mm.
and they want to nurture that, whereas I learned to survive by like being pseudo independent. So like, don't have this needy, this is difficult, don't need me. I've had to work through all of that. So
So
you're
now they're older, your kids are older and they don't need you as much. Do you prefer, does that easier for you?
yes.
I
Also,
feel the same. I
spent
think I would be the same.
I spent, almost 20 years studying what I study, training, doing what I do, working with other people. That all feeds into it, because I'm constantly, I say I do my work so I could be reminded to stay on track of consciousness,
Yeah.
because I keep constantly being in conversation around it. But I'm good. I can do this bit. I'm good at the being able to not judge. I'm good at being able to let go of control. I don't want to be ultimately in control of everything.
Mm.
So I don't have an issue with my nearly 16-year-old growing into an adult, because I don't want to hold her as being a child and a baby. I feel kind of waves of sadness and grief for what has gone and been, and but I'm loving these people they're becoming, and getting to know them and understand them and help them understand themselves. That's something I really love. I feel a lot of sadness at probably not loving the baby bit.
Mm.
I feel I missed out on something I was meant to feel. And I don't know anyone with even maybe even very much younger siblings, but people with children that might be listening to this that can relate to that, because I think that's quite hard. We feel like we must have done it wrong if we can't quite grasp what was wonderful about it. And maybe maybe that relates to relationship too, in the sense of learning to understand what's beautiful about a relationship growing after 5 years to what it looks like at the very beginning, and transitioning from what is exciting and dopamine and whatever and all of that into allowing the depths and the roots to grow down and transition into a more longer term thing. I think it's a similar thing that's difficult. Like, I'm loving seeing it grow, but I'm wistful for
The honeymoon phase.
might not get thrown up against a wall ever again,
Yeah.
in a passionate way,
Yeah.
not an uncomfortable way.
Yeah. 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 Oh,
And,
I totally get that. And I think so many of us do. And I remember, obviously I had this amazing love story with my husband and the way we met, and it was just ridiculous. And I remember going through a grief process of when when I could feel, okay, we've like normalized to each other. And because I knew I'm going to marry this guy and I'm never going to have that again. Even now, it can make me like, it's really hard. And I don't know if it was a Friends episode. There was something about, it was probably a Friends episode where talking about, oh, we're never going to have that first, that feeling at the beginning. But then there have been so many other firsts that we've had, and we've been together nearly 9 years, and I'm so proud of what we've created. But there is also, having to acknowledge the grief of like, of not being in that honeymoon phase in the way that when you first meet each other. I
it's
just Go on.
that excitement of the
Yeah.
beginning of I've, I've been watching the Vampire Diaries with my eldest. Anyone who hasn't watched it, it's a huge investment of time, but worth it. Totally worth it. It's really clever because all the main characters are like old school, beautiful heartthrobs from when we were younger. So there's like a Matt Dillon lookalike, there's kind of like a Rob Lowe lookalike. It's brilliant. But they love each other like love has never been loved before in this series. Like, it's always vampire love. And I have experienced quite a bit of grief that I'm never going to have that. Oh, well, I say never, you never know, but I've been with my partner for 26 years.
Mhm.
So like, oh, I just would love someone to look at me like
Yeah.
that again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what
Instead of sometimes you're like stood here, not stark bollock naked. I don't know, vagina naked sounds weird, doesn't it? You stood there naked and they're like, they don't even
full
notice. They're like,
frontal.
hello.
It's a different thing, isn't it? It's a different thing.
Yeah.
And I think that can be, I would imagine in your world, something that people find within their process of working with you, a big challenge to get through and over to the other side of the beauty of it. Because when we're carrying a lot of trauma and we're in negative patterns, all of the messaging of that step is, this is wrong, get out, get away,
Yeah.
save yourself,
Yeah.
this is boring, shouldn't be like this, it's meant to be a movie. I do remember
Yeah.
my husband saying to me, Amy, it's not a Hollywood movie, get over yourself.
Like, yes, it fucking is. Watch it, be one. I actually had to create a whole new part of my program, Love for Leaders, called Commit, because I'd created the first part was Heal, and that was all about, looking at past patterns and working on your relationship with you. And then Attract, which was more, it was the dating process, but also the fun, the playful, the magic, all of that. And then what happened was loads of clients were like attracting in their partner. And then exactly what happened to me, they wanted to run for the hills. It's like sudden, be careful what you wish for, because you suddenly get it. And then particularly the first year, where it's in one level, the honeymoon phase, but when the honeymoon phase starts to go and you slip into like, you see all the hard bits of, that person, and I didn't sign up for this, all that shit. So I had to create another third of the program called Commit, where it was dealing with all of that stuff. And like, how do you, not only move from casual dating to the committed relationship, but like, how do you get beyond the honeymoon phase? Because it's not going to be a Hollywood movie where you skip off into the sunset. Like, there's going to be, and we're going to move on to this in a moment, like navigate inevitable new relationship pitfalls that we all go through as you get to know each other more. And when the fantasy sort of starts to break down, how do you navigate conflict and like, life decisions around, particularly for me, it was like moving in together. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because my husband literally his nickname was Messy Joe at university. And I found this out because my friend happened to be in halls with him at uni and saw a picture of us on Facebook when we started dating. She's like, "Are you dating Messy Joe?" I was like, "For fuck's sake." Of all of the thousands of people I was stood in that, festival next to,
Yeah.
I had to stand next to the messiest fucker around, and I'm like OCD tidy. And so it's a lot, like, because it's not about, I realize it's not about the mess, it's the trauma that I associate, you know,
Chaos.
it's
Mess
chaos.
is
That's it.
chaos. Mess is chaos. Mess is mess, and then chaos is not safety.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, we think the mess won't bother us because we love them so much in the beginning. Oh, it's
Mm,
his mess.
mm.
Promise you, 18 years later, his mess is fucking annoying. But it's never and okay, can we accept our partner's humanness, right? I guess is kind
Mm,
of what it is. It's like, can
yeah.
the human of us be accepted by them and theirs come to us? And can we accept that there are bits we don't like about a person? Not everything has to be perfect, but we can love them through it, the nuance. And then we start to kind of bicker with one another, and we believe that bickering is bad. So there must be something wrong. And actually, disagreeing, you really want to be with someone who thinks like you? No, you don't want to be on the same page as each other all the time on everything, because you will be the most boring couple in the world. We need to reframe what understanding our partner's humanness starts to look like and what it can be. But I think we've been taught to be right. Either
Over being happy. Yeah.
whichever side it is, like, be right, make sure they understand my perspective. And if they don't understand my perspective, they don't love me. If they can't understand where I'm coming from, then how can they love me? It's like, well, maybe if we just understand that we're different, we don't have to agree. But if I love this person, I want to understand at least where they're coming from. So conflict can be healthy, because if you're looking at it as a growing process and an understanding of a person and who they are, and that you're being right and they're being right can be equally right, which is a lot of work I do on sibling rivalry and fighting, because both siblings think they're right. Whatever they're arguing about, you're right. You're 100% right. When I was arguing with my sister, I was 100% right. She was 100% right. That was why we were fighting. Please don't get involved and try and solve it, because then one person ends up wrong.
Yeah.
It's not about that, maybe.
So get that. And I see that with my siblings, but also Joe. Joe is one of 3 boys. Well, they're men now, I guess. But and it's so funny, isn't it? Oh my God, siblings. It's just like, how can we all have come from the same place where we're so different and our perspectives are so different? I'm gonna cough again.
We've had totally different parents.
Yes. Say more about that.
People laugh when I say that. We do not have, whatever siblings you have not been raised in exactly the same environment, even if materially you have. One came first, whichever one that is, so that's different. You've come in at different times to each other. You've come in at different points of your parents' relationship, and you trigger in your parents completely different parts of them.
Oh, I just got full body shivers. Yes.
So totally different experience of your parents to I've only got one sibling. I've got one sister. We have completely different experiences of our upbringings.
Yeah.
And we're incredibly close, and we both get on with our parents. We're very lucky. But she has completely different struggles to me. And so she tries to talk to me about what is a struggle for her. I have learned now that it's not about me validating the experience in terms of telling her it was right or it was wrong, because for me it was probably very different. It's about validating her experience, that her experience is true for her. It's not about whether a parent meant it or didn't, and whether it was fair or not. It's about, it felt hard. Well, that is true.
That's so relevant to romantic relationships too.
Completely.
When you can come from that place, instead of, like you were saying, like the need to be right. Do you want to be right or happy? I want to be fucking right, okay? Because I am right, so fuck you. That was how I was, I'm so stubborn and it doesn't work. God knows it doesn't work. But I've got so much better at this because like you, like I do this to hold myself accountable because,
Yeah.
I mean, my story was I was a cheating addict. I was a mess. Like it was all from childhood trauma and I just was all over the place. So I kind of, this career, it really makes sure that I have to stay accountable because Lord knows what would happen if I didn't, honestly. Like and seeing how much I have got better at instead of shaming, like when I think back even to how I was at the beginning with Joe, and this was me, having made so much progress and done so much work on myself. But when I was triggered and I would erupt and, the passive aggressive shit, and like, I don't do any of that anymore because I'm like, we're on the same side, punishing you so that I can be right and hurt. Like it doesn't work. And I can't be asked, quite frankly, to live my life like that and these power struggles. And even in friendships, like I just want to be able to feel safe with someone. And that means that you tell each other the truth, but without blaming and shaming. And, it's about, like you were saying, the validating of the other person's experience. If someone tells me that they're hurt by what I said, I would before defend against
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
no, but essentially saying, no, you're wrong. But I didn't do that or whatever. It's like, no, whatever my intention, the result is you have been hurt by my behavior. And I'm really sorry for that. Not if you've been hurt, actually that's your experience. And it's coming from compassion. And actually it takes a lot of maturity, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
It's really, it's, I'm sure you find this in your work. People want a strategy and a tool and a thing to do in a situation, which is great. You can say, well, you need to be able to validate and you need to be able to listen. And when they say this, you need to come back with this. And I use things like don't use the word you if you can avoid it. Take ownership of what it is that's going. But if you're triggered, if you haven't explored why the pattern exists for you, and again, it's not about blame. So people hate to do this work, I think, because they don't want to go back to feeling guilt and blame on their parents or their youth or their siblings or the school, whatever it is. They don't want to go back and like, I don't want to just make it everybody else's fault. It's like, it's not about that. It's about understanding how a pattern developed. Everyone's doing the best they could, blanket. I mean, you've got like serial killers out there, and I can tell you they've done the best they could, even if they're doing horrific things. They are functioning from where they're capable, and that is it. So if we can be empowered enough to go back and go, oh, okay, so these kinds of situations kept coming up that made me feel really insecure, vulnerable, ashamed. And I didn't like that feeling. So I did this to guard myself against it. And that worked. That was awesome. Brilliant. But now it's causing huge problems in my relationship. Now, every time there's a huge mess, I start flinging things around and passive aggressively saying this and that and reminding everyone how amazing I am and how hard I work for everyone and no one does anything for me. And in fact, I'm not getting the response I want, which is deep understanding. I'm actually getting shut down and distance from the people around me because they're like, I need to get the hell out of it. So we understand where this pattern came from. There's a part of you that's just trying to survive. So if we can make that part of us feel safer and not so afraid and a deeper understanding of where it's coming from, what you find is a lot more space in those moments to play out the tools and the strategies and the understanding of attack and defense doesn't work because that part of you has been able to breathe and relax. And then you can do the tools. So you have to get a little bit to the root.
Yeah.
And you have to do that work. And you have to do it in the field. That's what I call it, going into the
Yeah.
field.
Research, doing the research.
It's also,
Yeah.
I'm sure the people sit with you and talk for hours about what their relationship will look like. It's like, okay, now just get out and hit a few potholes.
That's what I say all the time because what I found is I've attracted quite a number of avoidant women and trying to get so that's very different to me because my issue was like I had to actually tone it the fuck down. Like I didn't have a problem getting men. It was the type of men and then how I was in those relationships. But some women, it's like they desperately want the relationship, but they are so avoidant. I'm like, I can only like listen, you've got the time to be in the classroom doing the studying, you've done all that, you need to get out in the field. Exactly what you're saying. And they are so terrified to do it. But I'm like, like I can't
Because they're
help
avoidant.
beyond that. It's that you're avoid exactly. But it's like, listen, this is why, and that we're moving on to really talking about self-parenting here, is that this is why the first part of Love for Leaders is all about heal. It's like when you develop that relationship with yourself, when you're like, I've got my back. And it doesn't mean you're not going to feel shit and rejected and sad. But, I've talked a lot about this. Like, I got to a point in my love life where it was such a car crash. I was like, I'm no longer willing to abandon myself in order for someone else to not abandon me. And I also need to know if someone does reject me, because that's life, it happens. I'm going to get rejected. We're all going to get rejected. Bloody Beyonce will have got rejected. I don't know what from, but I'm sure she has been.
Yes,
Like,
one twice.
so it's like, I've got to learn that I have got my back and I will be okay and I will get through it. And and that's really what this is about. So can you speak a bit more into the whole self-parenting thing? Like, what does it mean?
Well,
Why is it
actually,
important?
I think, listening to what you're saying, I think that we have been taught to be ashamed of not getting what we want.
Yeah.
So we're afraid to want anything. And we've been taught that strength is not feeling hurt. So if we're
Mm.
really strong, then we won't feel that pain. And actually, I believe people feel more peace and they live fuller lives when they feel strong enough to feel pain. Because life has a rainbow of emotions and feelings. And it's not the feeling that hurts us, it's the shame and the repression of the feeling that hurts us. And that's why I say
Yes.
to a lot of people, and like, yes, I work predominantly with parents, but it's interpersonal relationships. I work with a lot of people in relationship as well. It's relationship work. And I say to them, the work is not in coming in here, working with me, doing a course, and noticing your triggers and getting rid of them. I think that's what we think healing is, isn't it? Oh, I'm going to do some
Yeah.
work on myself and rejection's not going to be hard for me anymore. It's no. Healing is being able to be in a situation, put yourself in a situation because you know you want something, and accept that if it doesn't work out for you and it really hurts, that it's not about who you are as a person. You have not failed. You are not wrong. You are not broken. It's not something you should be ashamed of and you should hide from. Because, and I think we were made to feel so ashamed as children
Mm.
for our feelings. Don't feel, don't cry, get over it. And look how brave you are. Oh, you're so brave. And actually, really, what is brave is connecting with the sadness and going, this is really, really hard, and I'm strong enough to be in it. I'm strong enough to be authentically myself. And I think our games that we play around trying to avoid those feelings and only show the parts of ourselves that we want to, which is the beginning of the relationship, right? That feel good, that feel attractive, that we feel are lovable by other, kind of puts us in a situation where we never feel like we're in an authentic relationship. And I'm sure you've had that. I just don't feel like he loves me for who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you only feel like he doesn't love you for who you are because you are hiding huge chunks of who you are. And you know subconsciously that you're doing that. So how can you trust him?
Yeah.
You haven't shown him who you are. You've given no opportunity.
And how can you have real intimacy or connection? When we're talking about fighting right and having conflict, which I think is like you were saying, it's like we don't want to deal with that. We just want it all to be lovely, lovely, lovely. But I know that when Joe has seen the hard parts of me, the parts that are traumatized, much less so than they were, but they're still there.
Yeah.
And when I've been brave enough because I feel safe with him to show it and it's ugly and I projected on him, but I get to a place where I can say, I'm sorry, that wasn't about you. And he goes, and it actually makes me emotional. And he goes, I know.
Yeah.
And he can just hold me. And I'm like, and then we move through the conflict and we become so much closer. Like we even went through something, was it last week? Yeah, last week. And I'm so proud of the fact that we can go there and we can have the hard conversations and we just, the fighting's so much better than it used to be, because it was, I look back and I was like, oh, you were just a little girl in so many ways. And I've grown up a lot in this relationship. And I just want to go to what you were saying, because it's like we feel shame for wanting something, because what if we don't get it? And I see that a lot with clients, clients who are very, very successful, high achievers. And I identify with the high achiever piece, because for me, it was a defense mechanism. It was a way of like escaping trauma, was just like, get A stars, be the best, whatever it was. And we first met in our mutual friend Lucy Keaveney's yoga class. And I remember just clicking with you straight away. And I just knew, I was like, we're the same, like we're both achievers, and you've got that sort of, I'm going off a tangent here, but you've got that energy about you, like you are a seeker, you've got that thing in you. And I want to understand, like, what was it that made you go the parent, like the route that you've gone down in your career? Because I know that you've done so many different things. Like, what was
And it
it
all
that?
led here. It's all, well, maybe not the fashion bit, but the bits after. I think it landed on parenting because it is, in my mind, the relationship you can't get away from, the biggest
Mm.
mirror of your own triggers and patterns.
Mhm.
And if I can help a parent, any parent, or even a co-parent, someone who's not a natural biological parent, but who's chosen to like raise children, work with a lot of like mums and dads that have come in as the divorced, the step parent, and they're trying to freaking navigate a teenager that the kid dropped in their lives. If I can help a parent overcome their reactivity in their trauma, right? So not overcome the trauma. Trauma's trauma. Our life is our life. We've got here. But if I can help somebody come to a place of self-love for who they are, and that's one generation, right? The way that person then deals with their child and that relationship, and how that parent relates to that child and their experiences, and who they need to make that child be, and how they need to make that child be or not, as a result of their own self-love, because suddenly they don't need to model this person into something else, because they're already dealing with, they're already in themselves, and that's okay. And this person can grow in freely, more freely, into who they really are, and start from a point of more self-love and self-acceptance. Then when they have children, and I do believe it goes down the generations. I mean,
Mhm.
we've got our stuff, but our parents had probably more stuff than we had, but their parents were more we've all got more conscious every generation that goes down the
Yeah.
line. That if I can help the parent, then that's it. We've broken that, and it goes all the way down. And less judgment about self-awareness. I think we have so much judgment, so much fear of being in trouble because of how we were dominated as a generation if we didn't do what was pleasing to the generation above. That's why we fight as hard as we do. That's why we don't listen to fight right. That's why we don't listen in conflict, because the minute someone feels hurt by us or tells us we did something that didn't sit right with them, we have to defend ourselves, because we
Yeah.
feel we're immediately wrong, rather than going, okay, that wasn't right for you, and I can be accountable for that, and where can we go from here, because I have my experience as well. And so if I can help a parent do that and come to that self-acceptance for them, and then bring that down to their kids, they'll do it for their kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. And that's where we're transforming the face of the parent-child relationship, which means essentially we're transforming interpersonal relationship, because it will then it goes into your work, it
Yep.
goes into your relationship with your friends, it goes into how you show up in the world.
Completely. And that's how we change the world. That's how we change the world, babes. We're doing it.
That's what I always say with my sister. I say, I'm changing the world one person at a time.
Yes.
Able
Yeah.
to just see people love themselves a little bit more. And I would say the essence of it was hating myself so much, probably subconsciously through my whole life, various other ways of showing it through kind of high functioning disordered eating as a teenager, and drug abuse in my early 20s. But really having a kid and being like, I suck, was basically essentially what I got to. I was like, I suck, this is terrible, I suck, I hate myself. And I hated myself for hating myself. Like, I mean, I could really take it that far. That's how much I could hate myself. I could even hate myself for the fact that I hated myself. And I think it really came from just wanting to help people find that path back to, we're not so bad. We're doing the best that we can. We're all good people, and we just want to be seen, heard, and understood. Just want a place to be heard. And it's all the little facets. I say that we're diamonds, and we are within a diamond are the many facets that make a diamond a diamond. And those facets that are in us are tiny little versions of ourselves from every single phase of our lives. Good bits, bad bits, difficult bits, traumatized bits. And the bits we don't like, we don't listen to. And how much better do we feel when we just get heard? We don't even need a solution most of the time. Just want to be heard. We just want to have a good cry.
Yeah.
See me, just see what was hard for me. I don't need you to take it from me. I don't need you to fix it for me. I just need you to hold enough space for me to feel valid in the feeling and not ashamed of it, and to not feel small and embarrassed. Just tell me I'm okay. Tell me I'm real. Tell me I'm lovable, even in this dark bit. It's healing. So that's what I want to do.
That's so beautiful. I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, so I could talk to you for ages. I can't believe we've already been on as long as we have. But as we start to wrap up, I do want to share just a few tools when it comes to fighting right. So whether, like, you've named some situations already, so it might be you're dating a person, they're being avoidant, or there's some red flags cropping up, or your kids aren't doing what you want, or your partner parents differently to you and you don't like it, or you're trying to parent with your ex, which must be so hard. Whatever the specific situation is where conflict arises, have you got any tools that can help us to navigate that conflict more effectively?
I would say if you can start from a place of, it's not my job to control other. I don't need to make them agree for me to be right. I think that's a really important one. We're not meant to agree, I think, is something really important to carry. And this is, I mean, it's big with parents and teenagers. It's like, you're not meant to agree right now. Like, part of this is you need to buck up against each other. Always start with I. Own your experience. I am thinking this. Don't make assumptions. Especially if you're avoidant. If you are avoidant, you will immediately, anything will happen, and you will go to worst case scenario because you will protect self. So you were like, I need to get away from this person because they did that, which means they don't this, or they did this. Drop your story. Note your story, but drop it. And go into whatever situation it is to get more clarity with a question rather than a statement. Don't tell someone else what they're thinking. You don't know what they're thinking. You can say, you and I were meant to have dinner tomorrow night, and now you've cancelled, and so I'm thinking you're not that interested in spending time with me. Is that right? And give them a chance to answer the question. Sometimes we don't ask the question that way because we're scared of the answer, but the truth of the matter is, if that answer isn't an answer you want to hear, you're better off hearing it now than in 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you don't care. I'm thinking you're not interested. I'm thinking because we haven't been texting as much this week, you're seeing someone else. So if we can come from, I'm thinking, also we're acknowledging, we're telling our brain neurologically that it's not a truth, it's a thought. And can we start to come from that place? So avoid you did this. If I say it to you now, you did this, don't you immediately, even just me saying, and I'm giving you a thing, but you're immediately on the back foot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you immediately go, fuck you. Yeah, it's immediate. It's an
Did I do
immediate
that?
fuck you from me.
Let's change it to let's change to I think, or I feel really rejected because you were late home.
Oh my God, it's amazing, isn't it? Because it's, yeah, you're taking ownership. You're saying a fact, you were late home. That's a fact. But instead of it starting with you were late home and that means this,
Yes.
you're leading with it's so simple. It's so
Own
simple,
it.
that shift. But immediately being on the receiving end of that, I don't feel punished and I want to come closer to you.
Yeah. Oh, do you feel rejected? Why?
Yeah.
Well, because you're late home. I didn't even think to let you know I was running late. It's a completely different to you were late home and that's rude. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I've got work on and you don't understand where I'm coming from. And it's just so, and especially with teenagers and that and parents, that you never, you always,
Mm,
you
get rid
never
of them.
take the rubbish out. Never.
Mm,
State what you need. State what you need. Get good at asking. You don't have to expect that you're going to get it, but just get good at asking. And I think that's really hard for women. It's like
yeah.
a whole. You need to do a whole course on it. You actually need to do a whole course on it, Persia. And like, how can we feel safe to ask?
It's a big part of Love for Leaders.
It's
And honestly, the women, when I tell them this is what you need to try, go and get out in the field and go and try it, people really struggle. Really, really, really struggle with it. And I'm like, you know what? The first pancake's always shit. There's no way around it. You've got, the more you do it, the easier it gets. The reason that when I met Joe, I was so good at stating boundaries and what I wanted, this is where I'm at, this is what I desire, was because I practiced it with a guy, which was terrifying. And I was all over the place when I did it with him. By the time I got to Joe, I was just like, I'm just going to be honest, which sounds really basic bitch. But I'm
it,
like, I'm
is it
just
though?
going to be honest.
Isn't that the paradigm that to ask what
Yeah.
you want is wrong? Is it? It's like I say to my daughter all the time: if you don't ask, it's a definite no.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, it's a definite no. And I've done, from when she was 6, like going into restaurants and asking for the Coca-Cola in the restaurant. She'd be like, I'm really shy. I'm like, I know it's embarrassing and it feels really uncomfortable, but if you don't ask, it's a definite no, because I'm not asking, so you won't get it unless you ask.
Mm,
And she'd go and ask. And now she will ask for everything.
so good.
Just we've got to get used to asking, because I think that people want to please each other, especially when you're in love.
Yeah.
Really want to help each other. And actually, we're afraid of the big conversation. Like you said, actually, the we get closer the bigger conversations that we have, which is true. But it's counterintuitive because we've been so taught as a generation to not cause a fuss, that we don't cause a fuss and we harbor resentment, and then we use passive aggressive behavior as a result.
Yeah.
And actually,
Yeah.
our shutdown, our emotional shutdown to avoid the difficult conversation is what causes explosions. It's what
Yeah.
causes disconnection.
Yeah, 100. The passive aggression, but particularly for us Brits, I think we're really good at the pass ag, you
The
know?
Americans are pretty good at it too. They just wrap it up in a joyous voice.
Who?
The Americans.
Really? I thought, oh, God, that's interesting. Well, they do a good job because I didn't even notice it. I
Well,
didn't
I lived in
even notice it.
California for many years, and so
Oh,
I
yeah, of course you did, didn't you?
noticed it. What's one more tool that I think is really useful? Leave the room. Be aware of what's happening in your body, own it, and take space. You don't need to deal with everything in 1 second. You can actually own it. I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I'll be back in 5. I'm going to go and reboot. Because when you feel the feeling in your body, and whoever's listening to this can probably relate, oh yeah, I know that feeling. I know where it comes up in me. I feel tightness in my throat. I feel it come up in my chest. I'm kind of ready for a fight. I want to go in. When I notice that happening in my body, what I know scientifically is happening is that the logical thinking part of my brain has shut down to protect me from danger. Our evolution isn't as good as we think it is. And I think I'm about to be eaten by a lion. So all the cool, calm, and collected side of me that can think and understand and hear and reason has literally, it's like doors closed, and the reptilian part of my brain that's ready to run for the hill or attack said tiger is raring to go. The blood's pumping through my veins, it's not in my extremities anymore, and I'm ready to go. So if I can feel that happening in my body, and I'm adult enough to know that there isn't a saber-toothed tiger in my living room, it's best that I get the fuck out just for 5 minutes, even 2 minutes, to start breathing again and regulate, to be able to come back in and actually hear what's being said.
Do you know what's so key here? Because I used to be very good at leaving, but I was leaving for effect. And even though I wouldn't have wanted to say that at the time, I was leaving and I was disappearing and you wouldn't know where I've gone. I used to run away, all of this shit, like
Yes.
total avoidant, but it was to get attention. So that it's so mature to be like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm going to take myself, I'm going to go and just give myself 5 minutes and I'll be back.
Yeah.
It's just because you're basically, and again, you're taking ownership of it for yourself. You're not blaming the other person. And you're also reassuring them that I'm going to come back. We're going to, this is going to be dealt with. And I just feel like it's again so simple, but my God, it's so powerful.
It's so powerful. We want to make everything everybody else's fault. So you'll notice, those of you listening, the first couple of times you do it, you might be thinking you're doing so well because you're like, I'm going to take space because you.
Yeah, because you're a
like that. Actually, it's taking the power. It's like, I'm going to do. I'm not owning and taking responsibility and accountability for it, the whole thing in myself. I'm looking after me so I can be the best version of me in how I meet the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, can you meet me there? Because my expectation is going to be that if I'm going to mature enough to do this, I want you to come with me.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do it together.
Yeah.
That can be that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that is. We'll get you back on to talk about that in due course. Okay, before I ask Amy my final few lightning round questions, just a quick heads up. In the show notes, we've got an amazing free resource for you, which is my Love for Leaders scorecard. I'm not going to bullshit you. It's very confronting. It uncovers your strengths and weaknesses around dating and relationships. Everything we've been talking about today, guaranteed, is going to come up in that scorecard, and it also gives you bespoke tips and tools to get the relationship that you desire faster. We have a link to Love for Leaders, which I've mentioned a few times in this episode. You can find out more about it there. Amy, before I ask you my final questions, where can people find out more about your work? Is there anything significant that you want to mention?
Oh, well, I'm on Instagram. I'm not very prolific on Instagram, but I am there. Amy at Amy Carlton Coaching, I think it is. Amy.
We'll pop it in the show notes.
Yeah, Amy Carlton _coaching. And actually on my Instagram, you get kind of like quite a few kind of like videos and tools and tips and things like that there, which are great. I work one-to-one with people if and when spaces come available. You can find me online, amycarltoncoaching.com. Spelling of my name is unusual, so do look at the show notes. I run group programs a couple of times a year. One is called the Parenting Revolution, which is basically reparenting yourself. If you are thinking about having children, if you have small children, any age, it's a how to be, not what age to do. It's like doing six months to a year's worth of therapy in 8 weeks. Parenting Revolution. So I run that a couple of times a year in a group, and I also run it one-to-one, but that's a kind of message me personally and see when I have availability to do it, because it's a big program. And there is also a teenage one, which might not be for your listeners, but it could be with second
You
time.
never know.
Exactly. And that's called the Roadmap, and that's also really interesting kind of strategies and tools for navigating the teenage years. So that's where you can find me. Maybe the book will come at some point soon.
I can feel it. I can't bloody wait to read it. So you're gonna have to get on writing it. Okay, so these are the lightning round questions. Okay. Are you ready, Amy Carlton?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm nervous, but I'm ready.
What love life advice would you give to your 15-year-old self?
Oh, I'm living with my 15-year-old self. So be honest, say what you want, and don't take it as seriously. Have more fun. you're not going to marry them.
Hmm.
It's unlikely. Rejection isn't about who you are. It's not who you are. Go out and get it. If you don't ask, you don't get. Have fun. Go have that feeling as many times as you possibly can.
Enjoy it.
And
Love
don't
it.
listen to other people's judgments, because it's all about them and not about you.
Yes. Bloody well, here to that one.
Yeah.
What's one thing people may be surprised to know about you?
Weirdly, that I'm not vegan. You think I'm vegan?
You do have a kind of vegan air about you.
I'm not vegan. I'm not vegan. I have a lot of tattoos. And
You've actually done a tattoo for me.
I've done a tattoo for you. And I'm addicted to books. I'm addicted to buying books.
Are you like me in the loads are half finished?
Yes, but I also think that most educational books only need to be half the size that they actually are.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, final question. What is your number one piece of advice for any single women listening who are killing it in their career but really struggling in their love life for whatever reason? What would you say to them?
Work out what you're most afraid of and forgive yourself for it.
We've not had that said.
It wasn't your fault.
Mm.
And you were a young person that couldn't control it. That's what I would say usually. Because usually it's an avoidance of being rejected or embarrassed or shamed. And somehow we think we did it and we are going to keep it away from ever happening again. And it wasn't our fault.
What a beautiful, comforting note to end on. You've been such an amazing guest. This conversation has gone to places I was not expecting. It's been confronting, but it's also been really fun. And you're bloody amazing at what you do. Like you really are. And if I do ever have a child, you consider yourself a lifelong client coming your way.
Great. That's what I want. I've loved it, Persia. Thank you. It's been so much fun. We could talk for hours and hours and hours.
Well, I'm seeing you tomorrow night at our friend's birthday party. So we're going to continue the conversation there. But sadly, that's not going to be recorded.
Thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen to this point. I am grateful for your presence.
As am I. Thank you so much for listening. Mwah!